God bless America.
Civil War is an intense, powerful movie, taking America's divisions to the eye-opening extreme. You may have heard it doesn't take a particular political stance, which some have called a cop-out, but this movie takes a much broader perspective than the narrow-minded debate of red versus blue. It's not a liberal movie or a conservative movie, it's an egalitarian movie. It's a movie that makes us appreciate the democracy we take for granted, because it could all go south and descend into ungoverned chaos overnight. It's a breathtaking vision of a deeply divided nation at war with itself. The cast are incredible, the visuals are stunning, and the direction is razor sharp. The fact that it doesn't get bogged down in the political specifics of the war will undoubtedly be a point of contention for some, but I thought that ambiguity was part of the film's genius. It's not about the origins of a new American Civil War, it's about the fallout that follows. This isn't a dissertation on contemporary US politics, it's nail-biting, pulse-pounding cinema. Be warned, spoilers lie ahead for Civil War.
It's like, holy shit, as an American, I said, I don't want this to happen. I don't want us to be in a civil war.
You shouldn't want it to happen.
Right.
I don't.
Right.
It's been interesting to watch Alex Garland's filmmaking career evolve over the past decade. His unofficial directorial debut, Dread, a ruthlessly violent adaptation of the classic 2000 AD character, is one of my all-time favorite movies. His official directorial debut, Ex Machina, is a sci-fi masterpiece posing pivotal questions about the humanization of artificial intelligence. His follow-up feature, Annihilation, mixes the familiar with the otherworldly for a totally unique sci-fi horror experience. His third film, Men, freaked the hell out of me, so much so that I'm not even sure if I liked it, but it definitely made a lasting impression. And that brings us to Civil War, which could very well be Garland's last solo directorial effort since he's become disillusioned with the ball ache of directing. If this really is his final film in the director's chair, then he's gone out with a bang. Civil War starts off a lot slower and less action-packed than the trailers made it out to be. There's a riot and an explosion early on, but after that all the warfare is kept in the far distance for a good while. I was initially worried I'd been duped. It was sold as an art house action movie. What if it's just a regular old art house movie? But it does eventually become the action-packed epic promised by the trailers, and the way it escalates to that is quite brilliant. As they get closer and closer to the front lines, the film gradually gets more and more intense and action-heavy. By the time they get to Washington, it's a full-blown war zone, and you don't get a second to breathe. It's a ferocious, visceral spectacle, but it doesn't make the war look cool. It's absolutely terrifying. Civil War takes an apolitical stance in that it doesn't take a side in the conflict of left versus right. But it's not an apolitical movie, it's deeply political. It's just that it makes a much broader political statement than just left bad or right bad. It's about division amongst the American people, but it depicts that division in the abstract. It's not about policy issues, it's about people turning on each other. The film is decidedly pro-freedom of the press, which is a very leftist idea, but it's treated simply as a democratic idea. Above all, the movie is a warning about the dangers of embracing fascism, and that should apply across the board in any democracy. Full autonomy on either side of the political fence is a bad thing. Civil War doesn't tell you the president's party, and the story's fictional secession is an alliance between the reddest of red states and the bluest of blue states. So it doesn't allow you to have a knee-jerk reaction to the war, it's just there's a civil war going on. Some people are getting involved, some people are running scared, and some people are burying their heads in the sand.
I guess aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America.
We just try to stay out.
I think the true genius of Garland's vision was showing this war through the eyes of journalists, so you get a truly neutral perspective. If you were following the perspectives of soldiers on one side or the other, you'd naturally be forced to empathize with that side more than the other. But the journalists are right down the middle. They don't care who's fighting who, they don't care who's winning, they just want to capture it on film. Civil War is very character-driven. It's essentially a road movie about this ragtag group of reporters driving from New York to Washington so they can interview the president before he's deposed or assassinated. You could have told the exact same story with the exact same characters set 10 years ago in Iraq, and it seems like that's the point. This kind of thing is always going on somewhere around the world at any given time, including right at this very second with Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Palestine, but in the cushy Western world we never expected to come to our doorstep. This film is less about how a new American Civil War might break out and more about what it would look like if it did. Garland assembled a hell of a cast for this movie and they all knock it out of the park. Kirsten Dunst anchors the movie with her passionate yet understated turn as a Lee Miller-esque photojournalist who's grown bitter from years in the field. Wagner Moura provides great support as her more laid-back partner Joel, and Stephen McKinley Henderson is typically fantastic as Sammy, the grizzled veteran who mentors his younger colleagues. The shining star of the movie is Priscilla Presley, Kaylee Spaney, in the role of Jessie, an aspiring war photographer who comes along for the ride, eager to get her start. In all her scenes in the first half of the film, Spaney has to portray various degrees of shell shock as Jessie is increasingly disturbed by the horrific things she sees. Spaney manages to find a different way to play the shell shock every time Jessie faces a new trauma, and she's just as authentic each and every time. In the second half, she stops being horrified by the war and starts being exhilarated by it. After having a gun waved in her face and being knocked into a mass grave, Jessie's character arc could go one of two ways. She could either realize she's in over her head and doesn't want to be a war photographer after all, or it could confirm that this is the life she wants. The former would be the more predictable outcome, but Garland goes with the latter, and Spaney makes it land. She's traumatized beyond belief, but she admits that it gave her a rush and made her feel more alive than ever. By the time they arrive in Washington, Jessie is chasing that adrenaline rush without a hint of fear, and Spaney plays that fearlessness just as effectively as she played Jessie's early terror. Nick Offerman doesn't get a ton of screen time, but it's a lot of fun to see Ron Swanson as the president. And Jesse Plemons gives an unforgettable supporting turn as a jingoistic soldier. He only shows up in one scene, but it's the most unsettling scene in the film by far, and it's all thanks to his performance.
Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you?
Civil War has a really great soundtrack. Its juxtaposition of the horrors of war with rock music reminded me of Vietnam movies like Apocalypse Now and Full Metal Jacket. Except Civil War has a bit more of a punk vibe with songs by Suicide, Skid Row, and Silver Apples. The thumping beats on the soundtrack pair perfectly with the explosive on-screen action for a really dynamic piece of cinema. A big part of making a great movie is coming up with a great ending, and Civil War has a great fucking ending. It's darkly anticlimactic that after this terrifying cross-country journey through deadly war-torn America, the soldiers find the president cowering under his desk. This pays off a great Sammy line from earlier in the movie about how notorious dictators like Mussolini never live up to the hype when all is said and done and their empire falls and they're captured, because they often turn out to be weak-willed cowards. Offerman's president shows himself to be exactly that as he's dragged out from under his desk and uses his last words not for some bold statement of defiance, but to feebly beg for his life. Civil War closes on the perfect final image, Jesse's photo slowly developing to show soldiers standing over the president's bullet-riddled corpse with huge grins on their faces. It's a truly unnerving sight. It calls back to that photo of Saddam Hussein with his gleeful killers, and it hammers home the message that there are no winners in war, because the people on the winning side have had to sacrifice their humanity to emerge victorious. Garland spends the whole movie building to this ending, and it doesn't disappoint. Overall, Civil War is an undeniably powerful viewing experience. Regardless of your political affiliations or lack thereof, you'll come out of the theatre shook up. The flagrant lack of context for how the war came to be, dodging details at every turn, will undoubtedly frustrate some people. But if this movie was about particular policies or current politicians, it'd be relevant for the next 5 years max before becoming a forgotten relic. By taking a more ambiguous approach to its politics, it's completely timeless. It would have been just as impactful 20 years ago, and it'll be just as impactful 20 years from now. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.